PIF and J presents Breaking Ground.
Hello, PIF family. This is Breaking Ground. A French philosopher and a mathematician by the name of Blaise Pascal once famously said, "There is a God shaped vacuum in the heart of each man which cannot be satisfied by any created thing, but only by God the Creator, made known through Jesus Christ." Wow, what an amazing quote that is. But what makes this quote so ironic is that it was widely known that Pascal was a pessimist. Nevertheless, this comes at the realization that no matter what we fill our hearts with, there is nothing in this world that can fill that void that only God can. Unfortunately, the reality of our lives is that we are so persistent in trying. Now, ask yourself this question, everyone. Why? Why? Because the discomfort, perhaps, of emptiness is so unpleasant that we try to fill it with anything and everything else. And can I tell you, this is problematic. In church, when we look at our passage here today, the parable, we're looking at verse 7 of Matthew chapter 13 and verse 22. And this addresses the issue of how we fill that void, that emptiness with everything else. So let's read this together and follow along with me. Here's the parable that we're focusing on in Matthew 13, verse 7, and it reads this. Other seeds fell among the thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Fast forward to verse 22, and here's Jesus explaining that parable. He says, "As for what was sown among the thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and it proves unfaithful." Now, let's take a quick moment to recap how we got to this point. In this parable, we have seen the seed be sown in two other places prior to this. Number one, along the path. Number two, on rocky ground. And here on number three today, it says that it was sown among the thorns. The along the path, it addressed the condition of one's heart and the danger of the outside forces. If you recall, this was the verse where Jesus talks about a bird that comes to devour the seed. The rocky ground, it addresses the instability of our own hearts and how easy it is for us to build up on this faith, but so much easier to deconstruct and go backwards. Now, today, when it tells us that the seeds were sown among the thorns, it addresses the content of what's inside each and single one of our hearts. Now, recently, a few brothers that I like to call friends, they came to visit me from Las Vegas a few weeks ago. And one of the brother there, he noticed a difference between the two coasts, that is the East Coast and the West Coast. And what stood out to him was this. He said, everyone seems here in the East Coast to be so busy. You know, people are walking faster, promptness is emphasized, and he felt prohibited to talk about or ask for leisure time or free time because he felt like everyone here was always on the go and always on the move. How many of us know that feeling of being too busy? Especially many of us here trying to advance in our careers and in our lives. We're caught up in this busyness. We're always too busy for this, always too busy for that. And there's just not enough time in a day to complete half the to-dos on our list. Am I right? As you know, busyness, it has health ramifications, relational consequences. But did you know that it disrupts, more than anything, our relationship with God? So here's another question that I just kind of beg you to answer. Why are we so busy? And what are we so busy with? Well, according to our parable, it's a generalization and it's almost more so a summarization of our heart's content with the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches. It's basically talking about our desire for success, our desire for wealth, security, reputation, and happiness. Think about how far and how much we're willing to sacrifice to achieve these things in our lives. You know what's so interesting? Blaise Pascal, I quoted him just a moment ago. If I could say one more thing that he has once said before, he said, even those who hang themselves indeed seek happiness. Think about that. Think about how the the heart and the desire of a desperate individual, how much longing that individual must have that he would hang himself in seeking for happiness. You see, just as we run out of time in a day, or run out of hard drive space on our computers. Every heart, there is a limited and a finite capacity. And if we overflow with the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches, we run out of space for God in our lives. A great example of this can be found in the Gospels, where Jesus talks about this rich young ruler or the rich young man. And in particular, I'm bringing from Mark chapter 10. And if we look at Mark chapter 10, we see this rich young man come to Jesus with confidence. And I think it's fair to say that this man knows that he has lived his life in a most righteous way possible. But look at it from this following angle. Jesus begins to question him about the contents of his heart by bringing up a few of the commandments that he should have followed in his life. He mentions, do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, honor your mother and father. And after listening to this rich young man responds, teacher, all these things I have kept from my youth. To which Jesus then responds and replies back saying, you lack one thing. Go, sell all that you have and give it to the poor. Now, I want you to notice something about this story that Jesus shares. There is this young man from the moment of his youth who has kept all these commandments, and he has never broken out or never gone away from them. Now, this is a different way of looking at it, but if we use the language of kept for a moment, he has been hoarding all these things in his lives, meaning he has been filling up his heart with the things to appear and seem righteous, so that one day as he meets Christ and as he one day meets Jesus, he'll be able to confidently come before him and present himself to him. But as you notice and as you see here, that's not enough, because there's not enough room in his heart for God. And therefore, Jesus tells him, using this language, of all those things that you have kept, there's still one thing you lack. Make room for me. There's not enough room in your heart for me. You see, church, when we are so caught up in the ways of the world, we choke the word of God, we choke his presence and the relationship that we ought to have with him. Why? Because we're so busy. We're bringing all these things of the world into our hearts, and there's no room. We need to make room for him. So today, everyone, can I encourage you to take some time as you reflect on this passage and make sure to read and answer the questions below. And hopefully you will be challenged to satisfy the God-shaped vacuum in your heart that must be and can only be satisfied with God himself. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for our session here today. I trust that this will be a blessing to you. So until next time, have a good one.